Hello, everyone. I'm Adrian Sanabria, host of the Enterprise Security Weekly podcast and founder of the Defenders Initiative. Welcome to this webcast sponsored by Token Security. Joining me today is Ido Shlomo, co-founder and CTO of Token. How are you doing, Ido?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Adrian. I'm very, very happy to be here.
It's lovely to have you. And today we're going to be talking about access controls for AI agents. Very good topic. Very timely topic. With everything that we're seeing right now, all the activity. Before we jump into the conversation, for the audience, I would like to direct your attention to the blue bubbles at the bottom of your screen. The first bubble down there is the studio chat. So you can, I don't know what they call it, that it sounds like what you would call the behind the scenes chat. We have a separate one for that. But that is where you can ask questions. You can tell us where you're connecting from today. You can chat with other attendees, and I will be checking that chat throughout the conversation. And I'll pull in questions into the context of the conversation as you ask them. So don't save your questions for the end. I find it's a lot more useful to get your question as it pops into your head, so that we can pull it into the that part of the conversation that we're having. We don't have to jump back at the very end. Also, the third blue bubble down there, that is the handouts button. And if you click that button there, you will find 4 handouts in there, I believe. It is off the screen for me. I have to finagle it a little bit. There it is. 2 of them are PDFs. So you can just grab those PDFs now. And we've got 2 URLs in there as well. So feel free to grab those at any time. And I will try to remember you or remind you again towards the end to grab those. All right. And with that, let's jump into the conversation here. So, before we dive into solutions for the problem here, can you, I think it'd be useful to explain the key differences between the different types of identities, human identities, machine identities. And it's been a big question, I think, for a lot of people, how we would handle identities for AI agents, if they would be handled more like human identities or if it's just more service accounts, right?
Yeah. That's an awesome question. And like I had this long time mentor that said when you want to start a talk and you want to start it and like great and to have good energy, start with a good visual. It always worked for me
Okay.
so far. So let's just start about that specific question with good visuals. I promise not to bomb us with too many of these during the talk, but let's see how it looks like in my head at least. So as human, we were the foundation of identity. Basically, um, the entire idea was how do I keep my resources safe while allowing secure access for a small number of elements, basically, whether it's customers' identity, sorry, workforce identity. Human identity has always been pretty small scale, and I'll talk about what big scale looks like when we move to machine identity. It was very role driven. And I think that the most beautiful part about human identity is that it has a single source of truth, usually what we call an identity provider or an identity provider tied with an HRIS system, allows me to have a role-driven access to basically anything I need, but only what I need. And then that went on for about the first 25 years of identity. Then about 5 to 10 years ago, we started to see an explosion of a new type of identity, which was in scale much bigger. I like to call it the identity that runs the internet. Basically, everything that's happening back end when we consume applications online, every time that we start our iMessage, every time that we log into our corporate email account, every time that we pull a query from an application, there's tons of workloads behind the scenes running on the back end, serving a very, very, very task-driven container cluster function workload. and those were the machine identities of the world. We tried to solve those identity management problems using Vault, using let's say a privileged access management solution, but they were a bit too big, and it became like a massive, massive, massive challenge that up until today is not yet solved. And then what happened lately, we are seeing the third type of identity arises, which has joint elements from the first two: the flexibility and the role-driven approach of human identity, and the scale, the velocity, and the pace of machine identity. Basically, when human identity is very flexible but on a small scale, and machine identity is very robust but very, very task-driven, agents' identity are very flexible, very fast, and can do things that human can't. Now, what we're seeing is a new type of consumer that is the data analyst agent, the customer support agent, the cost optimization agent, the infrastructure engineer agent. We call them agents. They are basically built on the same technology as machines, but they have the flexibility and wide spread view and hyper connectivity of humans. So I hope that gave a little bit of kind of order and a construct to start thinking about agents' identities.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really useful history, and it's you know what I think is interesting about well, machine identities is you tend not to think about them, right? You know, there's all these components of authentication and authorization that you don't see. You know, the OAuth keys, bearer tokens, refresh tokens, and so how these things access stuff. And we've seen such a mix, right? You know, there's AI agents that live on your laptop, you know, and kind of inherit your permissions, or like a Microsoft Copilot where it also inherits your permissions. But then ones where they're given explicit access to maybe a third party like Salesforce or something like that, where you it gets uses an API key or something like that. So yeah, there's so many components here, right? Like I think for me, part of securing it is just being able to see it all, right? You know, adding some transparency and some visibility to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I think that when we introduce this new type of workforce or these assistants, it's really, really important to remember that this is a new technology. We're trying to understand that. We're trying to be as like either whether we are IT, whether we are security, whether we are identity access management teams, we are trying to be the biggest believer of identity, of agents in our organizations. But it's very hard to do when we don't really know what are they being used for and who builds them. So I really agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I was just looking through some of the handouts, and the one where you have the top 10 security risks. Number 5 is lack of traceability and auditability.
Yeah. Um, what? Yeah. Go ahead.
So you know, I think this is a good spot to talk about like what are you actually seeing from customers? How do you see people using AI agents today? Because I think for a lot of us, you know, maybe for our organizations, you know, we haven't quite jumped in yet, jumped into those waters. So, you know, we can only imagine, or we know what we've seen other people talk about or the media talk about. But how are you actually seeing people use agents?
I think that all of us are using it a bit. Like, if I suggested each and every one of the viewers of of this podcast, or even you, Adrian, an AI workflow that would make your let's say the video editing for your videos, or a content writer. I think that the
Mhm.
idea that we have these assistants would like largely be kind of amazing for us. I think that being able to do it in a way that makes sense for us, that's the hard part, because there's so much excitement. And I'm like, I'm the biggest fan of like security being an enabler for organizations and not like the one that's pumping the brakes. So there's so much excitement of seeing what this technology can do that it's kind of being eventually on the on the 80% it has all but good intentions, and on the 20% there's good intentions with like a risky use. For example, you want to see what a data analyst agent does, so you give it full admin permissions on your database, on your data lake or data warehouse, and it's not correlated to who are the consumers of this agent. Not everybody should be able to query all of your database or your data warehouse unrestricted. Everybody has their own role, everybody has their role-based access control scheme, and eventually most of what you see is due to this excitement and due to this being a new and it enables new ways to do business, new ways to like derive processes in the organization. You see tons of misalignment in permissions, misalignment in identity management, agents that are being started up and never retired because their owner has started them and either doesn't care or left the organization. There's like tons of areas where we could improve while still keeping our current velocity. I want to say like 80% of the use today is very, very valid. It's the 20% that I'm worried about.
Yeah, so you hit on something interesting there, talking about leaving an agent running, right? Like I think when some of us think about these agents, we think about like something you create once and it just runs autonomously forever. Are you seeing any of that, or is it more like a container where it gets created for a single task and destroyed as soon as it's done?
I'm seeing much more of the former. Like
Mm.
I would say that it's even more exciting. You start this agent, you're not 100% sure what it can do, and counterintuitively to any automated process that we saw before, you add and add and add more permissions. You add more
Mm.
access because you're so excited about what it does. And one
Right.
day that toy becomes boring. The
Yeah.
toy becomes like, okay, like there's a new coding agent. Now I'm going to be best friends with Windsurf. I'm done with the Cloud Code.
Hmm.
But still, all of the API keys that you created for your database, all of the corporate systems that you integrated into that agent, they're still there. The agent is still
Yeah.
running, and you
You
need
didn't revoke them.
to
Yeah.
exactly. You didn't revoke them because, like, you never know. Maybe I'll come back to it at a certain point. So, I
Right.
never saw a workload that's gaining more permission during its life cycle when we were working on workload identities, but on agent, it really happens.
Yeah. So a lot of scope creep, it sounds like. Uh, yeah.
So,
Which is, I mean, that's a story of everything in enterprise security, right? Like how did this file share get full employee access, read and write? Well, somebody had a problem once and they couldn't do something they needed to do. So full permissions is the quickest way to troubleshoot any problem, right?
yeah, absolutely. Like that's the path of least resistance, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so we've already kind of talked on some of the common mistakes that people make. The handout is great for that as well. Just looking at that, yeah, I would urge the audience. Which one of the handouts is it? It's the third handout there. Top 10 agentic AI security risks. We've already mentioned several of these, but yeah, obviously over permissioned. What other kinds of issues or common mistakes do you see people make when they're deploying these?
Let me say just in a quick minute. Um, So I grew up in this community here I'm by the way dialing in from Tel Aviv.
Mhm.
And I grew up in this community of amazing people that build the core foundations of cybersecurity. I really believe in like giving back and being like a knowledge base for the people that I work with as far as I
Mhm.
So I really urge everybody to take a look at our website. There's tons of resources, blogs, videos, lectures that we gave in worldwide conferences about both workload identity and agentic identity. Some cool tools. I think that we'll talk about it later. So going back to your question, apart from over permission. So I think that there are like basically I would say the three core pillars of agents identity security would be, and those are correlated to the common mistakes. I think one is not keeping your eyes open. Like I would say like that, not having an inventory, not having standardized paved roads for organizations for your like employees to use, and on the other hand, not having visibility to the agentic fabric is a very, very common situation where you're like saying, how can I know? Like how what could I do? Everybody's like adopting these agents super rapidly, and I think that basically when you run or when you achieve the ability to discover, you basically have you are becoming the biggest enabler, and you're decreasing your anxiety from agentic technology by a lot. And the second part would be not assigning ownership.
Mhm.
Basically, you need to make sure that you document and track the humans behind the agent. Basically, no.
Whoop. Looks like we lost Ido for a moment. Oh, you're back.
I'm good. Okay.
Yeah.
So I started saying that ownership is super important because, like, no agent created itself; it's all human-made technology,
Mhm.
and each agent was created with some intent. The intent that its creator gave it, and I think that tracking ownership, understanding the correlation between what a person tried to do and what was the agent that it created, eventually also leads to the third part, which is tracking the agent's access and permissions and seeing that there's correlation between the original owner. Let's say the original owner was an engineer. It created an agent with the intent to help that engineer keep track of deals that their organization or their startup is working on, and the permissions that agent got in order to really make sense of what you're seeing. I think that these elements are super critical for agentic security,
Yeah, and just hearing you talk about ownership like that, I spent a lot of time talking about vulnerability management and asset management, and I think that's one of the biggest places where we have problems in asset management. Is maybe 20 to 30% of a lot of organizations' devices. There's nobody assigned to it. So why is that WordPress server not been updated in 4 years, not been patched in 4 years? Well, it's nobody's job to do that. Nobody's assigned to it. So we have to figure out, make sure that somebody's responsible for it. So I imagine it's maybe you want to manage and track these agents like assets, right?
Absolutely. I think that there's a reason. Okay, so it's not intuitive for everyone to think about why identity is such a core component of AI security. So I want to give like my 2 cents about that, and that would help also understand why we as an identity security company work so hard on AI agents. So basically, an AI agent without an identity is a chatbot. It's a big knowledge base that was trained on a certain corpus. It might have internal knowledge inside it, but that's it. It's limited. It's like an isolated island. The only bridge or slash bridges that island has into your organizations are the doors that we call identities. So we believe in an asset inventory that looks at both sides, both an
Mhm.
identity inventory, which is also something that organizations have a hard time to keep. Identity inventory is a super hard problem to solve because there's such a fragmentation, especially in the world of programmatic access. When we had only human access, it all went through the same identity
Right.
provider,
SSO is all
SSO,
tied into
exactly.
AD, SSO. Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. Like I really admire all of the human identity companies that existed before Token for
Mhm.
doing a fantastic job. In programmatic access, it's much harder, and you need to tap into like a million different identity providers. And on the
Yeah.
same time, correlate those identity providers to the agents providers, which we can talk a lot in more depth, but I think that that asset inventory would not. Uh, um, it's like a graph. What's more important, the vertices or the edges? You can't separate.
Mhm.
It's both.
Right. Yeah, it's yeah, and just thinking about somebody being responsible for an agent, makes me think about like kids running around a store unsupervised. Whose child is this? Get control of your child.
Exactly. And then it's like just not to install the agent creator. It's like junior employees. You need to train them. You need to
Yeah.
make sure that they understand their task well. And along the evolution, they become smarter and more well adjusted to the task that's expected from them.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't press that button. Right.
Yeah.
Um, with that, I think this would be a good spot for maybe a bit of a description of what Token does, of what Token's product does, and how it fits in with all the stuff that we've been talking about thus far.
Okay. But like I'm going to stay off the salesy pitch and more focus on like the challenge and why we built what was our vision. Basically, we saw a world. When Itamar, my co-founder, and I have started a company together, we looked for the best challenge to solve that fits our abilities. So both of us are cybersecurity professionals, so it was obvious to
Mhm.
be in security. And what we saw is a huge like a huge proliferation of identity-based attacks. And it didn't add up. And whenever I log into an online service, I do it through like continue with Google biometric authentication. So why was that happening? Especially because of those programmatic identities. Now in the world of AI, we are preparing for the biggest revolution that humanity has ever saw in enabling the most smartest islands to have bridges into our most sensitive resources. So what Token is building is an identity security product built for AI agents. It's basically what we call identity first AI security, which holds the point of view that if you have control over the access that the agent has into organization, you are the biggest enabler. And if you don't, you have like a huge risk. So Token builds this data layer that has sensors and could be adopted really quickly in order to put sensors in the agents inventories, in the identities inventory, even in vaults, in secret managers, on endpoints, and so on, to bring all of that picture into one place and make sense out of the identities that you have. Now, when we expose when you have an agentic consumer for an identity, we help you with exactly the three problems that I described before. Getting full discovery of every agent and what access does it have, including agents that um, you weren't aware that existed in your organization, which is what we call shadow AI. We build a very strong ownership model, which helps connect between the human and the non-human, or the human and the agent. And we build a right-sized permission model, which helps understand what should the agent really do, what it does with the permission that it was given, and how does that correlate to the agent's intent. So in a short 2 minutes, that's basically what we do in Token.
Yeah, and the website lays it out really well. If you look at the platform menu item on the menu. You discover the agents, you manage the life cycle. You make sure there's nothing, no abandoned children out there running free. Configuration management, so the posture management piece of it, and then identifying threats and automating workflows, which a few of those are I definitely have some questions about. But overall, like, I'm also kind of curious in how to discover and enforce policies here. How do you plug into the infrastructure to be able to see this? Because I
Yeah,
imagine, like, once you get to threat detection and response, you actually need to be able to see the prompts, like what the agents are doing, that kind of thing, right?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let's get more technical. So basically, we had this model where if you could bring all of your identity data together into one place, um, you could align those data layers together to make new conclusions that you couldn't before. So think about pulling your identity configuration, from example, from products like NHIs, AWS, Snowflake, Salesforce, Okta, and so on, and standardizing, first of all, the static layer of what identities do you have, what authentication mechanisms do they use, and what permissions do they have. Once you build that inventory, you start gathering more details. You plug into the agentic platforms. So let's say NA10, a super popular platform right now to build AI agents. Let's say Microsoft Copilot Studio for our more corporate users, or ChatGPT Enterprise, which is like the kind of like household name for agent building today. You start pulling the agents from there, connecting them to the identities that they use. Now, on top of that, we pull in logs, the activity logs and the audit logs that help us identify, for example, that this sales deal prep agent, an agent that was created for sales team, was created by an employee of the organization, being able to track exactly who has which permissions on the agent, who changed it, basically having kind of a ledger of ownership on that agent. And so we have basic discovery of the configuration, we have the ownership layer, and we have the usage layer, which is what does the agent do. When I ask it to query my Salesforce CRM, or when I ask it to create an SQL query for my Snowflake, how do I correlate between the prompt, even before that, the consumer, the prompt, the credential, the identity, and the permissions? When we are able to create this dynamic graph of activity, that's where we were able to start doing things like monitor anomalous prompts, or being able to detect that there is a mismatch between the agent's consumer and the identity's permissions. So that's a bit about how we plug into different products across the organization and tailor the data together.
Yeah. Yeah. And before I forget about it, I believe you have a free tool as well, which I was playing with a bit the other day, the Privilege Guardian.
Yes. I'd love to show that if possible. Let's see. Okay. Privilege Guardian. Let's do it really quickly. Okay. So, as I said, Token is a company that really believes in community resources, and eventually, as a startup, your reach is limited to the persona that you work with. But what we wanted is the ability to give agent builders a first thought about how to build the right access for their agents. Basically, we built this website. I know that there is a link in the handout, so you could use it. That is not dedicated to the security teams, but to the builders inside the organization, to create awareness and to spark conversation between the agent builders and the identity access management teams. Basically, what you do here is you build a new agent and you start designing the roles from the building phase and not after the fact. One of the most challenging problems in security is that you're almost always after the fact. So what if we could enable agent builders to specify exactly which resources, which buckets, which resource type do they want to access on the phase of designing the agent's intent and on the phase of deciding where it would be able to access, and generate the policy that would already be a good fit to what we want to achieve. Now, this will take about a minute and a half, so I'll stop sharing now. And I'll go back to it the moment that it finishes. But what it gives you is, first of all, as a security team, you feel much more comfortable about how people build access inside your organization. And as an agent builder, you have a new way to think about how do I make an agent that would not cause a fire later on in its life cycle.
Mhm.
So
Right.
we like to see it as like a more of an organizational phenomena and not just a challenge that security teams are facing. So
And
that's why we
I
build
think
the
this is huge.
privilege
Yeah,
guarding.
this
Yeah,
is huge that you've done this too, because with new technologies like this, and the way this technology works, the risks are entirely new in a lot of cases. Like some of them are the same, right? Over permissioning an employee, over permissioning an agent, similar kinds of risks. Um, except one has a little bit more agency and maybe common sense than an agent might. But just being able to see examples of it, like even if you don't use the free tool, if you scroll down a bit, there's a video of it, of the whole process
yes,
of it being used. Like, say, if you want to use the free tool, but you don't know what to select in those different steps, you're maybe just not that technical. You could still just watch the video and start to get an idea for, okay, here's something that's risky, here's something that's not. Um, so I think that helps people a lot, just to learn.
absolutely. And like, look, the worst thing that could happen is that the security team would be considered like the bad guy, like that guy that want to explain to me why my newest and bestest technology that I just wanted to have because I need to do my job in a better way. I need to be more competitive. I need to be like a better, like I want to have better productivity. And now security comes and says, "Oh no, well you can't do that." And like you scratch your head and you're saying, really, we can't find a way to do it like in the right way. Well, should I come to ask you every time that I like start a platform like that? We want to solve that equation. We want like everybody to be aligned on what's important, to have clear line of sight into a future where agentic, like our agentic partners are part of our departments, part of our workforce. It's really important to get it right and to start having that conversation. So I really agree with you
Yeah,
about that.
absolutely. Um, So yeah, I think we've looked at a little bit of this, but when it comes to securing these agents, and we did talked about we talked about things like AD, things like SSO, Entra ID. What is it about these traditional, maybe even non-human identity products, that are maybe not well suited for securing AI agents? Like, what are you having to change and put differently into the product that makes it that different?
Yeah. Wow. That's a great question. Uh, we try to understand like why human identity couldn't build it. It's eventually ends up in kind of like we can't call everything just an identity and security in the same way. We as
Hmm.
humans just operate differently. It's hard for us to understand how scalable, how fragmented our partners, like in the like in more of the programmatic access identities work. So, just as an example, like a couple of years ago, I don't know, 10 to 15 years ago, we saw a split between customer identity management and workforce identity management. And you can ask, wait, those those are two humans. It's not like
Mhm.
not any non-human identity.
Right.
But I think it's very important to understand when you don't have the right tool for the job. And so I would say that there are a couple of things separating between non-human identities and human identities, and then inside non-human identity between AI agents and workloads. So let's just start from the first split. I think the first shattering of the identity fabric that didn't support non-human identities was when the move to the cloud happened, and technologies like infrastructure as code and microservices started. And
Mhm.
the sheer scale, velocity, and variance of identities there became like unmanageable, like extremely large, fragmented identity repositories that change on a daily basis. And then between workload and agent identity, I think that first of all, it's a question of how the world will evolve. I was like just in a conference this last week. It was a Gartner Identity Access Management conference, which I was also
Mhm.
last year. And I was like, my jaw dropped when I just remembered that last year we didn't know what MCP was. Nobody knew what
Yeah.
those three letters
It's a year old.
meant at all. Exactly.
Mhm.
So I would say that my opinion is that agents are much more flexible and they are closer to human in their role-driven approach, but the technology um, base, like there's huge overlap in the technology between how we grant access to workloads to how we grant access to agents. So that's why us as a company like kind of graduated from only doing workloads to doing agents and workloads. Um, and we're starting to see a change where you're starting to build hyper connected workloads that weren't there before, workloads where the agent itself, it's very hard to characterize what are the limits of its access. It's very has many creative uses, and it's not very static like containers, clusters, and so on. So that's why I think that agents and workloads would also have a split, and we would eventually see dedicated agents identity security platforms like Token.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just the models are interesting about how you could swap out a model and you're going to anticipate completely different results
Yep.
just by changing the model, right? Like we've seen a lot of the industry complain about like OpenAI deprecating certain models, and like my stuff worked perfectly with that model. Bring it back.
Yeah.
Because now you have to rewrite your prompts. It doesn't respond in the way that you expect. And I imagine in the future we could expect to see, with agents that are more specialized. I imagine we'll see specialized models as well behind those agents.
Of course, and also standardization of the guardrails eventually is super important. Not only how smart the model is in like tasks like image generation, video generation, text, generative AI, and code. It's also would vary like how, or I hope that there would be an eventual point where you have some kind of a standard of how well the model is protected. But as assurance, a model can't access what you don't give its identity
Mhm.
access to. Meaning that's why
Yeah.
identity is such an important bridge into your organization.
Yeah, yeah, we've seen all kinds of tools for that as well, right? And it's just, I presume that just becomes part of your CI/CD pipeline, is like AI safety testing, evaluation, AI red teaming, that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Like I think that people are starting from day one when they adopt a new, and it's not only in applications. What you talked about is very like software development applications, but also in a lot of
Mhm.
corporate use, to start thinking about where is this agent going to end up in, and how much scrutiny do I need to give
Yeah.
it when I build it.
Yeah, Microsoft Word is agentic now. I guess that's
Yes,
Microsoft's new thing. Is
absolutely.
all the Office apps are. I forget the marketing term that they used, but yeah, it's not just these things are going to exist everywhere, right? It's not just going to be server workloads in the cloud or something like that. So you mentioned MCP. I think it's worth, for folks here. I don't know how familiar folks are with it since it is only a year old, but we again saw roadmaps rewritten when MCP came out. Less so agent to agent, which is Google's. MCP is Anthropic's. So maybe like a quick overview of what MCP is and how I imagine you monitor those connections as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are several type of agents. We can dive into the other types, but the two types that less belong to or less use MCP are managed agents and unmanaged agents. But the most common agent in the world is an endpoint agent. Why do I say that? Because I think that 99% of the people watching this have ChatGPT installed locally on their computer. And actually, Anthropic, which in a very, very, very impressive move over the last weekend, they created a protocol. That protocol is called MCP, and it's a standardized way to give agents tools that are extending their operation. So now I have an agent, which is basically my ability to have a conversation with a smart LLM model. But I want that agent to do smart things. I want it to, first of all, let's take the most basic use case, read files for my file system. So that would be the file system MCP, meaning that the file system MCP is a server that gives a set of tools to my local endpoint agent to read files from my file system. But now I want to extend the agent's ability to do much more complex things. I want it to monitor my production environment. So I give that agent a Datadog MCP, a Sentry MCP, or even an AWS, GCP, or Azure MCP, which allows it or which gives it tools to access my runtime environment, my monitoring tools, and now it's much smarter, but it has much more access. So you could say that MCPs is the standardized way to give and to give agents and specifically endpoint agents tools in order to access my systems. And those are built on top of the same technologies that we had for all programmatic access. That could be a personal access token, an OAuth integration, an API key, a secret, and or just a plain user and password. So what we do in Token is that we help you understand, first of all, which endpoint agents do you have inside your organization. And second of all, what tools do they have? Those tools could represent just a local file system MCP, but they could have, like, for example, a service account credentials into your most trusted system. And that way you are able to prioritize, quarantine, and make decisions on which MCPs are allowed, which aren't, which are the official supported ones, which are not. So that's a brief 2-minute background on MCP and their relationship with identity and agents.
Yeah. And where I'm curious here is I wonder, does it make more sense from a security standpoint to have agents that are more specialized, that have access to less MCP servers, like a narrow agent, that is maybe short-lived versus, I think the way a lot of people are using these on their local systems, it's like a one master agent that has access to a lot of different things, which from the perspective of an attacker, like that's what I want. I want one agent
Yeah,
on your system or in your organization that can tell me where all the good data is to steal. Tell me where all the important systems are.
absolutely. Look, I think that there is a tension here. We like to say right-sized permissions because you need to be able to work. Some people like to say, I have zero trust, which is like, okay, I am all for zero trust, but I'm also for also like a little bit of trust. That's also okay. But I think that
Also, getting
it,
some work done.
yeah, exactly, a little
We
bit,
need
just
function.
like
Yeah,
exactly, and it just doesn't a little bit of functionality to do my job, if that's okay. Um,
yeah.
so basically, I think that um, it is important to remember that agentic technology is new. Um, that most of the attacks that we will see in the next few years would target the technology because of the speed and the distribution it has. Speed is by design like an opposite relationship to maturity, meaning that if your agentic tool is not mature enough, if it doesn't have the right guardrails to protect it from attacks like prompt injection or poisoning of the input that makes it do um, as the attacker wishes, that means that the next point of contact that you would have is what tools does that agent has, meaning that if we acknowledge that agentic technology is quite immature right now, especially when it comes to security, we have to protect the bridges that lead it into the organization. We have to protect it from lateral movement. We actually, it's going to be published in a couple of something between days and weeks. What we are going to give a talk in RSA about how we abused uh, an MCP server of a very, very large cloud provider and got it to run code on the host machine, which is just like something our security research team does. And that's just part of nature of why you should really get visibility and make decisions on which MCP servers do you allow, which employees do you allow to hold long-term credential on their computers, and so on. It's quite a challenge.
So we have a new class of vulnerability. It sounds like a container escape. We now have MCP server escapes. That's a thing now.
Yes, something like that. Yeah, exactly. It's agent manipulation. Eventually understanding that these agents are here to serve us, and they don't know if you are an attacker or not. And they are, as we said, a bunch of crazy kids running around. So you could like persuade them to do
Yeah.
things that you don't want them to do.
Right. And that comes back to like that's one of the things that's so difficult about this technology, I think, is that, if you want to use it for customer service, sure, it's easy. You point it at your knowledge base and like it has all that knowledge and it can help people. But then if they ask it, like who's the 37th president of the United States, it'll also answer that, right? And that's way outside the scope of what you need your
Yes.
agent to do. So guardrails, understanding the intent of the agent and then guardrailing it so that it stays in that lane. And it's kind of like I have ADHD, so I can relate to the agent problem. It's easy for me to get off topic as well. Um, but
Absolutely.
yeah,
Think
it's
about yeah. What we see a lot is people experiencing that firsthand when their agent that they prompted doesn't do what they wanted. They say like, "Oh, the code that I wrote takes too much memory. Please help me optimize it." And the agent starts to
mhm,
analyze, and it eventually ends up by analyzing the fact that if you delete the data set, that code uses, you would free up a lot of memory.
It'll
That
use
would
less
be great.
memory.
Yeah, it really is dedicated
Yeah.
to do what you want. Like we see people, running uh like
Make some
DevOps.
space on my hard
Yeah,
drive. Okay, delete
exactly.
the whole hard drive.
It always starts with DevOps or IT, where they're like, I just wanted to triage this like problem that I had, and the agent runs so many niche tools. It's getting
Yeah,
detected by your endpoint detection product, like you're an attacker. It locks you out of the system,
yeah.
and you're like, dude, I just asked you to triage this bug. Why did you run a full
I
memory
didn't
dump
even think
on my
about that.
server? It doesn't make sense. Sorry.
I didn't even consider that the agent getting in trouble from other security tools and
Yeah,
triggering
yeah,
other
that
security
happens a
tools.
lot.
That's
It running on behalf of
interesting.
you. It's
Right.
it's working so much faster than you can. No chance that you are able to dump the entire file system in 5 minutes, like as a human.
Yeah.
So when detection products see that and they don't have like like sensors on the agentic platforms that said they don't know to say that it's a false positive. They say, okay, Ido was hacked. Okay, now we're going to like shut
Yeah.
down his account and like spend 3 days in trying to understand if it was him or is he an insider threat or whatnot. Um,
Well, and that kind of highlights, I think, one of the identity challenges here, right? Is like I could see this being a common HR issue, like your computer does something and the defense is, it wasn't me, it was my agent. I didn't do it.
that's
So
a fair
how
point.
can we tell? We need to be able to tell the difference between an agent on your computer doing something versus hands on keyboard, a human on a computer doing something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a big part of identity is also internal work, is creating the right constructs, being able to separate abuse of my admin slash user privileges for cases that weren't supposed to happen. I think that identity teams are our silent heroes doing that every day.
Yeah.
And I think that it all eventually ends up in, as I said, like visibility, ownership, and the right access.
So we've got a few minutes left here. We should look at the results of the what was it called? Privilege
Oh,
Guardian.
the privilege guardian, yeah. And
Yeah.
actually, like, I would love any feedback. If you use our tool, we'd be happy to work with the community to improve it for everyone. Okay, I was I was looking at it on the other screen. Can you see my screen? Yeah, I think
Yep.
so.
Mhm.
Okay, so basically we had I forgot about it. We had a customer support yeah, I think that we built a customer support agent that helps identify and analyze challenges in AWS environment by watching metrics and explaining about bugs. We really got a curated policy version that is tailored only to the areas that agent is supposed to go. I actually think right now that it's a cost optimization agent and not a customer support agent. But what you get is an least privilege permission policy that you can both send to yourself and analyze and try to understand. First of all, whether this policy fits your needs. You can already apply it and get different um,
Oh, nice. You can
templates
just copy
and
and paste.
yeah, exactly. You can just download this and use it, good to go policy. And also you can, in a kind of a gamified way, let's say, limit to more conditions and even narrower policy in order to get a better security score for your policy. So we get you to a fair point where you can start working with the agent and it can start to operate, but also teach you and educate on how you could even improve sorry, how you could even improve your and harden your policy further. So that's a bit about how the privileged guardian works and how agent builders can already start building the right access into their their environment.
Yeah, that's great. And again, gives you that opportunity to see what kinds of mistakes you could make before actually making them, right?
Yeah, identity is hard. I think that it requires you need a trusted friend to help you, and I think to be a token or trying to be that.
Yeah, especially AWS. I hear so much about how
Oh yeah,
difficult IAM is. There's always new features, new permissions, new products in AWS. So just keeping track of all that can be really tricky.
I agree.
All right. Any final thoughts? Where should folks start with this? Obviously, this free tool is a great start for getting used to kind of shaving down those permissions to the bare minimum that they need to be. We've got some great takeaways in the handout section here. But for organizations that are maybe in the testing phase, they're not in production yet. Like when should they really consider maybe a dedicated security tool like Token?
So I think that first of all, I think that organizations need to not start using AI. They need to run to the AI tools. Like start using AI tools as massively as you can, because those are would change the way you operate. They would change the way you do business. They would improve your processes. But at the same time, remember that you are working with a new technology. And if you are working with sensitive data, if you are running a business critical process, just as a fun fact, my career started in gaming. I was a pro gamer until the age of 18.
Mm.
I built servers, I hosted communities of games like World of Warcraft, MapleStory, and so on. I wouldn't have been able to do that without good security from the companies that run those platforms. So I like to say that my dream is to protect a gaming company and allow it to do what it does safely. So when you use an AI platform, remember that you can't mess around and you need to be diligent and responsible. And being diligent and responsible is not only in the AI model itself, it's being responsible for what access does it have and where it could go. Because the worst thing that you would get burned by a technology that wasn't mature enough with an attacker that was smart enough. So it really depends on your industry and or your organization size. But most large organizations would start with a security platform like this from day one, or wait 6 to 12 months, see that AI adoption really happened, and then go to get a tool such as Token.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the conversation today. I learned a lot. I always love it when we have a webcast where I get to learn things during the webcast. So thank you for that.
The feeling was mutual, and thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Thanks to our sponsor, Token, for making today's webcast possible. And finally, a big thanks to the audience for joining us. Thanks for all the questions and the engagement. And we'll see you next time.